Item number 10B is the June 12th storm update. Andrew Nottbaum, Director, Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management.
Welcome.
Madam Chair, I've got a slideshow coming up. I'd like to bring down, a team of folks. I've got some folks joining with me today. Got Meredith Nichols with the State of Colorado Division of Homeland Security Emergency Management. Amanda Meldrum with the PPROM, and then Captain Mike Archuleta, who's also a liaison for PPROM. So with that, here, going to give you an update on the June 12th storm. And let's see. So the conversation started a week ago yesterday. Extreme rainfall event, saw close to 4 inches in some places in the county. DHSEM, which is Division of Homeland Security Emergency Management, was looking at doing a disaster declaration and a state declaration related from a rainfall event starting on June 8th until probably last Saturday is what we're looking at. Damages were reported in Elbert County, Adams County, Lincoln County, related to infrastructure, which is what we call PA. Current tally, not including El Paso County, was close to $7 million in damages. So we had a meeting on Friday where we looked at damages within the county. We haven't gone through the official IDA process, which is the initial damage assessment, but these numbers are raw numbers that we're looking at putting together a formal initial damage assessment to collect the information. But roughly in El Paso County, $3.23 million worth of damage from this rainfall event a week ago Monday. El Paso County Public Works had between $500,000 and $700,000. El Paso County Facilities, $200,000. El Paso County Parks and Rec, $1 million. City of Colorado Springs, close to $100,000 in damages. City of Colorado Springs Stormwater, close to $1 million in damages. City of Fountain, $50,000 to $150,000. And then Security Water District, $60,000 to $80,000. We're still missing some information from some municipalities and departments, but what this led us to believe is that we needed to do a more formal process to collect information. I wanted to step back and talk a little bit, and I'm sure this group is familiar about how the FEMA reimbursement process works. We have a couple of different buckets of funding available. One is called IA, which is individual assistance, and that generally goes to homeowners or businesses. And it's for those people that are uninsured if we have losses there. It's not designed to make people whole. It's to get the in-between and fill some gaps where maybe insurance doesn't cover. And then we have public assistance, which are the big ticket dollar items. Public assistance is going to be roads, bridges, parks, open space, water facilities. And PA is really what this storm event hit us as public infrastructure. There are also something called SBA loans, which are the Small Business Association loans, where there are 25 homes or businesses that are impacted. There may be loans available for those individuals. And those are the biggest, those are sort of the top tier of the federal programs that help us with if we were to go through a federal disaster declaration. So what does that mean for the FEMA public assistance, which is the PA I was talking about? States, territories, tribes are responsible for estimating their cost of damages and assessing what those project costs may be. To receive a presidential disaster deck for that public assistance, which is for the public infrastructure, these estimates must meet indicator. Now, the statewide indicator, as it shows here, is, and I have it up here, the statewide indicator is $1.77 per person, okay, which is a total of $10,335,000. If I'm saying that right, I'm not very good at millions of dollars, so talking about that. The countywide declaration is $4.44 per person. Right? So in this instance, it makes sense for us, based on the statewide damages, to go through a process, if we were to pursue it, right now we're just evaluating it, to go through the process, to go through a statewide declaration, because we would be able, it's going to be easier to achieve that based on the indicators here. Although our initial looking at the damages, we may be eligible for a local declaration too if we were to pursue that, and that's the presidential declaration. So the PA program, continuing to talk about it, it's in two different groups. It's in emergency work and permanent work. The emergency work would be where we would have debris removal or emergency protective measures. And Kevin and Brian, maybe you're going to come up and talk a bit about that. If there were protective measures to restore roads and buildings, the overtime involved with those emergency protective measures may be reimbursable through a federal program, and also debris removal as part of the emergency work. The permanent work is looking to restore in these different categories: the roads and bridges, the water control facilities, buildings, utilities, and then park and recreational facilities. The one thing we're seeing so far with this is it's heard it was characterized as death by 1,000 cuts. You know, sometimes one bridge will get you $3 million and get a declaration, where it's a lot of smaller damage we're seeing. So what is that next step? It's about collecting the information out there, compiling it, looking at what is the nature and extent of the damages here, and then put together a request for a declaration to the state of Colorado or us locally, and that's a conversation we can have. The documentation is looking at three critical pieces of information: its location, a photograph, and an estimate of the cost damage associated with each of the items or the permanent work that has been damaged. And we put together a process late last week to collect that information by this Thursday, and then we have to the end of the day on Friday to report that to the state of Colorado. Some of what we're seeing here, and you may see this next, a lot of areas that are washed out. The one on my left here is the Fountain or Hanson Bridge in Fountain Creek, which was damaged. This is a $1 million bridge, is my understanding of it, and I think Todd's going to talk in a bit about that. And then a lot of our trails and open space and pathways. The dry creek bed, this is normally a dry creek, but because of the extreme rainfall that happened in the airport and Powers area, was damaged. Also too, so this is the CSPD hangar at the airport at 950 Aviation Way, had water damage coming into some of our buildings. And so we're seeing similar type of this damage similar to this at facilities, both in the city and county facilities, and then the municipalities as well. So the process we're currently in is doing that initial damage assessment. Captain Mike Archuleta here is helping with coordinate this process along with Amanda Meldrum in collecting the information. We need it complete by the end of the 23rd, which is Friday. We're hoping to have the information gathered by Thursday so we can package it up, give it to the state of Colorado. Once that is received, or from the end of the incident, the governor has 30 days to put together a declaration, to get the presidential declaration, and there's a formal process with this. You know, the one thing I'll mention too is that by leveraging and doing the damage assessments, we're helping the municipalities, the county, our state partners and our county partners. We can then make a decision whether we want to go ahead and actually go through with the cost reimbursement and apply for the reimbursement process, which is a 75-25 if we were to get a federal declaration. But this process currently allows us that second option to go through with federal funding if we so choose to do that. And then I will be the recovery lead in this process as the Director of Recovery and Emergency Management. So with that, I don't know if we want to do some questions, and I think Kevin is next. Great.
Any questions? Great.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Masson, Director of Public Works for El Paso County. If I could have the slide pulled up for Public Works. I just have a single slide to kind of give a highlight of where we're at, and hopefully you can see the pictures okay on your own screens. During the event, we had a total of 33 road closures. It was kind of a rolling closure of the roads as the water did move from north down to south. At one time, we had a total of 17 that were closed at one time. But with the 33 closures within 48 hours, we had everything open with the exception of two. The two roads that we were not able to get open are going to be it's Elbert Road, just 1 mile north of Murphy, and that's where we had a culvert failure there that basically washed out the road and underneath the road, and as well as J.D. Johnson Road over by just south of Falcon Highway near the National Mill Dog Rescue. During this process, and we had this again, within 48 hours, we had all but the two roads open again. As far as the damage goes, if you look at J.D. Johnson, that's the picture that's in the very center on the top, and it's also on the bottom left of your screen. That was basically a 35-foot wide river down that road, and we lost about 5 feet of depth off that road as well. And right now we're estimating around 9,000 tons of material that we lost on the road, and we're in the process of working that now. The picture that is at the bottom center, that's where we had the culvert failure. And what happened is the water overwhelmed the culverts, and as the water went underneath the road, created eddies under the road, and basically took all the material under the road and brought it out. So it's basically like a cave underneath the pavement that you see there. We did work with procurement. We've got 250-foot long culverts that are on order that should be here hopefully soon. But everybody in Colorado was looking for culverts in that first 24 to 48 hours. So we'll get that in as quickly as we can and get that road open again. One thing I want to mention is our crews. Our crews worked overtime. They worked the weekends to get this taken care of. Specifically, I want to give a shout out to Don McAllister. We jokingly say that Don is our mayor of Eastern El Paso County. I don't think there's a home built out there that he does not know who lives in it, or how long they've lived there, or the history of the area. So looking at the J.D. Johnson, when that happened, the first thing Don did while they were responding is Don went and started knocking on doors to find out who's in the homes, could they get access to their homes, and if they had to leave, could they leave their homes? Same thing with the Mill Dog Rescue as well. We were able to make sure that the homes that were on either side of that road did have the ability to get to and from their homes as well. So I do want to give a shout out to Don for that. Also, the foreman that we had working that night, the way they attacked this is they started in the north part of the county and just followed the water and followed the streams and see where it was going. And that's how they were able to find where our trouble spots were and to be able to get on those much quicker than waiting for somebody to call in with the problem itself. They actually were very proactive in finding the issues. At this time, I also want to thank our citizens. It is a requirement in El Paso County that you are to maintain your culvert that allows you to have a driveway onto your property. Our citizens that do maintain their culverts, 10 feet of either side, prevented additional significant damage by allowing the water to flow. So I do want to thank our citizens for doing that. Also, our citizens that were proactive in getting debris out of ditches when they saw issues in front of their own properties, clearing debris so water would continue to run. I do want to take a moment, if anybody's listening to this, that when people are doing yard cleanup, branches, trees, throwing them over the fence into the ditch is not the proper place for those things to go. That was some of the reasons we had some of the issues that we had is debris buildup and debris going over roads. As these things were in ditches, the water came through, picked it up, and carried it, and then created some of the issues that we had. But again, for our citizens that were very proactive, we do want to thank them for being team members in this and making this happen. One comment I do want to make, and this is, I don't know if I call this a fun fact or not, but on the north part of the county, a friend of mine that works on a ranch up there, they have a dry swale that runs through their property. He said he's never seen water in it in the last 10 years. The amount of rain they have, there's different checks that previous ranchers have put in to control the water. Somehow they ended up with 4 trout in this, and they're trying to find out how the trout got from whatever river they came from. To let you know, this is the amount of water that we had. They ended up with trout in the middle of a field that's been dry for the previous 10 years. So got to figure that one. That's what I was gonna. Well, he's feeding them right now, so you might have to wait. So he's trying to get them nice and fat. But that's all I have for the Public Works update, pending any questions.
I have a quick question. Given your PSA about the appropriate place to deal with the yard waste, during cleanup efforts. What do we have any extra slash and mulch events planned? I guess I'm not sure if the appropriate person is here for that.
I don't know of any extra slash and mulch events, but where we can take that type of material near section 16 in the Black Forest area. That's the one I'm aware of, and that's an incredible program that they have there to be able to drop that stuff. I don't know what their capacity is because I know a lot of people were using it last year. But I don't know of any additionals at this point.
I know that the slash and mulch really needed folks to come pick up mulch.
Pick up mulch.
So maybe kind of if some of your mulch washed away and you need some more, go pick it up so that you can then drop off additional items there. But that is definitely something that we just heard from them recently.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Maston? Okay, I think we're good, Mr. Maston. Oh,
Madam Chair, I believe we have Todd Martz virtually on Teams to give his update, and he may be able to address the question on the slash mulch issue as well. So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Is Mr. Martz up next?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. Thank you for accommodating me. I'm a little bit under the weather, and I'm going to share my screen. Referring to the slash mulch, we are still open up there at Section 16 Black Forest, and so you can get more hours and information online, but it is open and we'll be receiving and encourage people to bring their material there. We are near capacity, but we're going to continue to take it, so we're not stopping that. Thank you for this opportunity. I've got some photos and some slides to go through. This kind of gives you some perspective of where the majority of damage is. This isn't all of it. And you can see the congregation of it is mostly down south, but we do have damage in other areas too. I'll kind of walk through some of the specific areas. Andrew mentioned Hanson Trailhead and the bridge. That was something that we had just put in quite a bit of effort. Good news is the bridge survived, but the surrounding trails on both sides were damaged significantly. We lost park property on both sides. The creek bank eroded. A lot of the riprap that we had put in had been taken out. You know, we always say this was the worst flood, but there always seems to be one more that's a little bit worse. And so this is some of the damage at the Hanson Trailhead. You can see the bridge abutments that we've got there is still maintained and they're still there, so we can probably still reuse those. Those go down 35 feet down to the rock bed, and so the structure is okay. Picture on the right is the trail. That was where the trail was, and so when we talk about the efforts that are going to go into the restoring it, it's removing a lot of the debris. Fountain Creek Regional Park, just in general, had quite a bit of flooding. I know Brian's going to talk about facilities, but we've got damage to a lot of our roads and a lot of our culverts. The Duckwood Trailhead, if you see the picture on the top left, you can see that large boulder that's just about to go down into the Fountain Creek. The part you can't really see is the trail. On the other side of the trail is the ditch. And so we're very concerned about this eroding away and entering into the Chilcott ditch. So we're working with Public Works right now, engineers, on if there's some emergency things that we could do to address this sooner than later. More damage just to Fountain Creek Regional Trail, a lot of erosion, a lot of places where the surfacing is just gone and we'll need to replace. Clear Spring Ranch is our park down south, and we partner with Colorado Springs Utilities on this, and so they own the property, but we manage the trails and the recreation area. Some just significant loss of park property. The picture on the left is the trail, and so you can see it's completely gone, and so we'll have to restructure the trail off to the side. Falcon Regional Park. We did do the Kite Festival, which I'm very proud of our team getting able to do that, but we do have some significant damage here too, mostly culverts that were either failed or just washed away. Homestead Ranch Regional Park, we've already been doing some work out there on the trails, and now we're going to have to reshift some of that effort. You can see the drainage. That's an access road that the gentleman's standing in the ditch, and so we've got some repairs there. And then finally, this is just some other areas that we've got that we're running into some problems. The paint mines, we've got some erosion. Widefield Regional Park, we've got a lot of trails that are destroyed or missing. And some areas like the picture on the bottom is Wood Lake, and we're just waiting for the water to recede to really try to figure out what we're going to be able to do. At this time, I'm afraid the $1 million estimate that we were looking at early on is going to be relatively low. We're going to be well beyond that, I think, just for Fountain Creek damage. And so that's kind of the sad part of the pictures that we've got in parks and along trails. Look forward to having any questions at the end if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Martz? Thank you, and feel better soon.
Thank you.
Mr. Olson.
Morning, Commissioners. Brian Olson, Director of El Paso County Facilities. So I don't have a presentation today. I'm glad to say that of all the county assets, facilities actually had the least amount of damage. But we did have 5 buildings that were affected by floodwaters. As you know, the Fountain Creek Nature Center, which is still closed, and we're working with Parks on how to clean that up and get that open back to the public. I know it's summertime and it's busy for them, so we're working with them. Basically, Fountain Creek Nature Center and many of the other buildings, what's happened here is with the amount of hail, and we had reports of about 1.5 feet of hail down in the southern parts of El Paso County, but with the hail and debris, it overwhelmed a lot of these storm drains. So the water wasn't draining in the storm systems and backing up and entering the buildings. Criminal Justice Center, the roof over Seaward has had a significant amount of damage. The jail can still operate, but we're working with insurance and to see if what we need to do, and along with contractors as well. The Sheriff's Training Facility, which is over in the CJC campus, they had water into the building there as well. We've cleaned that up and it's operating again now. And then the Health South building, which is actually the health department's building, but we work with them. Same thing, they had quite a bit of hail. It overwhelmed the storm drains and backed up into the building. So that building was actually closed all of last week. So I'm glad to say that it's been reopened this week. And I want to give a shout out to my team because Jason Taft and his team were up earlier mornings and late nights extracting water from these buildings, getting it so they can reopen and make it safe for employees and the citizens to re-enter again. But like I said, the main one is going to be the jail, and we're waiting to kind of get the quotes on that. So we're looking about $200,000 in damages. That's what I have to share if there's any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Olson, Facilities? Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other staff presentations?
That concludes the staff presentations.
Okay. I believe, Mr. Notbaum, I think we have some questions overall for you. Commissioner Vanderweer.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's presentation. Pretty amazing. I have to say that while at my house we received a lot of rain, it seemed to be lesser than some of these other areas, and so the photographs are very, very helpful. A couple of questions, though, that I have in doing this evaluation, which would be due on the 23rd that you mentioned. So I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, do assessments of damage on private property contribute to that? And if so, how are we reaching out to the community so that they can submit their assessments as well so that we can get to a more comprehensive number? But the first part of that question is, are they supposed to be counted in those numbers?
No.
Okay.
How the system is set up is that if we were to go for individual assistance, which is a little bit harder than the PA assistance, that would be to cover uninsured losses, and not even, excuse me, to cover it, but would be generally those awards for individual assistance are $500 to $3,000 that just help in a short term if people were displaced or out of their homes. So really, we have not, to your second question, we have not heard much of damages other than some road damages to private property where those were washed out. Have not heard a lot about water damages to private homes that were uninsured.
Okay, I'd say maybe I don't know exactly how to play this out, but for those maybe private owners that have had a road washed out, that would probably be a pretty substantial impact. I'm hopeful that we're figuring out a way to get to those homeowners so that they've got an ability to understand what is available to them, whether it's reasonable or likely, but if there's a way to get assistance. The next question I have is with regard to some of these municipalities that you've talked about. Obviously, there's damage there, but we haven't heard from some others like Manitou Springs, Green Mountain Falls, and so forth. Do we have any understanding of damage in any of those places, or have they just not reported in yet? Or
they have not reported in. They were invited to the original meeting and did not have representation there. But part of our goal this week is to follow up individually and to get an estimate of any damages in those communities.
Okay, I think that's great. We put a lot of investment into Fountain Creek upstream from Manitou Springs because of the Waldo Canyon fire. So it just very well might be that Manitou Springs, that investment has done well to protect them, but I'd be interested in knowing that. And then we had, a lot of work done in the so-called formerly known no man's land area. That's that area that was county jurisdiction or is county jurisdiction between the city of Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs. And there was a lot of work done on Fountain Creek in there. I'm just hopeful that there's not a lot of damage there, but I'm worried about it a little bit. I haven't heard anything myself.
Yeah.
But Green Mountain Falls has a lot of unpaved roads, and they have very steep inclines. That's a perfect environment to get a lot of substantial erosion. And it's my understanding those roads were in pretty bad shape to begin with, some of those roads. So I am hopeful that Green Mountain Falls is going to report in because I just suspect there's going to be a fair amount of damage there.
Can I make one comment on that? Is that in watching the radar that night too, the storm cells really set up in the southern part of town, in Fountain security area, and then northeast. And so they may have been spared just simply by the way that the weather stood up because.
Yeah, they may have been spared, but it'd be, I'm glad you're going to reach out to them individually to see if they have any. And then this is going to, this question about how could fish be in some kind of dry pond area? So this is going to sound crazy, but it actually does happen. It's very rare, but sometimes thunderstorms have so much updraft, they pick up frogs and fish, carry them for miles through the atmosphere, and then dump them somewhere. So that is very, very rare, but that actually has happened. And that's just kind of an amazing thing, I think. One last thing a comment I have for you is the Fountain Creek Watershed District, which has done a lot of investing in Fountain Creek, kind of in southern El Paso County. I don't know if they are in because I sit on that board now, I haven't had a conversation with any of them, but I don't know if they've done any evaluations about a lot of the work that they had done, a lot of the investment, and whether or not it's now washed out and or gone. But if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to reach out to them.
They're a nonprofit.
They're a nonprofit. Yeah. But they're a nonprofit, and like all nonprofits, they're working towards a public good. They've done millions of dollars of investing in trying. The primary purpose of a lot of the work that they had done was to reduce sediment, to deal with the EPA lawsuit that existed in our community. But they did a lot about reshaping the creek. And I'd say there's a reasonable chance that a lot of that, or some percentage of that reshaping, is no longer there, that's gotten washed out. So I'd recommend reaching out to them and seeing if if they have any assessments of damage. And that, where that damage is may be coming to you from other ways. So I just don't know the answer to that, but I just think it's maybe a place to reach out to and go ask the question.
We'll absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Brett, did you have a comment on one of the questions?
Just one follow-up comment, having been in the business for a long time, for Commissioner Mander's question on personal damages. This assistance we're talking about will not cover flooded basements. And so if there's any public listening, if your basement flooded, this is not going to touch that or cover that. It's not going to cover generally personal property damages. And so just so we're aware, and sometimes we'll get a lot of calls from those who have flooded basements. And this program we're talking about is generally going to cover public assistance, public infrastructure, but not personal damage, in particular, not flooded basements. So
Thank you for that clarification. Very true. Yep.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you so much. This was a very helpful presentation. As you may have noticed, many of the roads and things we're talking about were in my district, and so I received quite a few phone calls. I think it was important for the public to hear the extent of which these were, very historic rains, and that there's a lot of different things the county is dealing with. I want to say huge thanks to Kevin Masson and the Public Works team for being really tremendous as I was answering phone calls last week and very patient with staying on the phone, helping me understand what was going on, what areas we were seeing, and how quickly you were able to get those roads open, oftentimes before I could even ask the question. So thank you to your team for that tremendous work. It's wonderful to hear that story about Don McAllister. He is a gem for certain, and many of the people who live in that area that I have spoken with have absolutely said that there was a lot of great communication there, and so I really appreciate that. Huge thanks also to Sonny Bryant for also spending lots of time on the phone with me last week as I was trying to get answers for the community members that were reaching out to me as well. But I really appreciate that comment there. That is one of the things that, has happened that we're seeing here, that I am hearing from a lot of community residents now, whether these are private roads, private driveways, and those type of things. So I appreciate that comment. If there are folks who are looking for assistance in those areas, is there anything that we are aware of at this point that would be able to assist those folks, or what should they be doing?
One of the things we've set up already, and I know they were getting calls into 211 and helping individuals get in contacts with VOAD agencies, which are the voluntary organizations active in disaster, and they can help with mucking out basements, probably not replacing infrastructure, but if there's, drywall cutting, moving debris, the VOAD and United Way is a very good place to go to start that conversation. And they do have, they have been in contact with the VOAD through the call center.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? I just wanted to say welcome. What an initiation, your first week that you're receiving here. But we're grateful that you were on it, that you're experienced in this, and I wanted to thank our state partners for being here today and guiding us through this process, and ultimately making sure that our citizens in El Paso County continue to receive what they expect from their government, and I'm grateful that we have leadership willing to work together and take care of our citizens. Particularly, most of our citizens here just love our trails and park system, and I think the loss of that in a very short amount of time is pretty catastrophic for the people who move here for that. Okay. Commissioner Geithner.
I neglected to ask one more question. As we were talking about the other municipalities, I'm curious if you have heard anything from Calhan or Rama at this point.
No, we have not, but we will reach out.
Okay,
Thank you for that. Yep.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for the report today.
Oh, can I actually bring up one more conversation? Was wondering if we wanted to talk about the disaster deck and if it was worth putting together a declaration for El Paso County while we have everybody here. After hearing some of the updated of the additional damage that keeps coming in, and one of the things I've heard from Todd and Kevin throughout is that as the water recedes, we're seeing more and can investigate more. And just wanted to have the opportunity to maybe mention that as a conversation as the county attorney and I have been talking about it.
So to clarify, are you asking for kind of staff direction to proceed with drafting one?
Yes.
Potentially?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And that doesn't take a formal action today, correct?
No, Madam Chair, I think that we would need to have that at a notice meeting.
Agendized.
Okay.
My folks have a draft ready. They're going to reach out directly to you.
Great. Okay. And that's me being new on that process and just getting some clarification on that. We've been in contact, but it could help us maybe with some of the procurement costs. Yep.
And commissioners, there's generally not a downside for a local declaration.
That's right.
It's pretty constrained and confined to this event. Generally, the state often requires or highly recommends a declaration if the state and the federal government declares an emergency. So the locals generally will declare as well. And so my recommendation is you do pursue a declaration for this event for funding and reimbursement purposes.
Okay.
Yep. And this one being unique in that our initial conversation was it was top down from the state instead of the bottom up, which was, I think, where we were thinking we were going. But as the more damage comes in and we start to see it in the county, I think we would meet a threshold either way. So just wanted to bring that up while everybody was together.
Thank you. Well, we will stay in touch and look for a future agenda item.
Great. Thank you.
Can I make a comment on that?
Please.
Good morning, Meredith Nichols with the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Just one comment on the disaster declaration process. It will also help establish an incident period within this, which, cut and dry with fires, we know, right, it started and it ended. That's easy for the incident period. But with floods, we can showcase in that disaster declaration when we saw impact in El Paso County, and then help within that process for the damage assessment and the reimbursement if we do seek that for El Paso County. So again, just like Brett said, I think it would be great it doesn't hurt within this process. So, and Andrew and I have been in constant conversations around this, and so happy to help within the process anyway. So thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments on this item? Okay. Thank you very much for being here. We are on item number 11.
Item number 11 is the addendum, and there is no addendum today.
Item 12.
Item number 12 is executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
We are adjourned.